Good morning, gardeners, and welcome to Thursday, June 13th. My name is Catherine, and I created a show called Good Morning Gardeners, even though I can't grow green things because I am referring to gardening metaphorically. We are planting the seeds for a better day. We're starting our morning by getting in the right mindset to cultivate a better life for ourselves, better communities, and a better world. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to add Good Morning Gardeners to your morning routine. I do my best to wake you up with positive and mentally stimulating ideas, but sometimes I do miss things. If you have something to add to the ideas I discussed today, please chime in the comments section below. Today's daily Stoic reading, titled A Leader Leads, begins with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. One person, on doing well by others, immediately accounts the expected favor in return. Another is not so quick, but still considers the person a debtor and knows the favor. A third kind of person acts as if not conscious of the deed, rather like a vine producing a cluster of grapes without making further demands, like a horse after its race, or a dog after its walk, or a bee making its honey. Such a person, having done a good deed, won't go shouting from the rooftops, but simply moves on to the next deed, just like the vine produces another bunch of grapes in the right season. The authors add, have you ever heard someone else repeat one of your ideas as though it were their own? Did you ever notice a younger sibling or relative mimic your behavior, perhaps the way you dress or the music you listen to? Maybe you moved to a new neighborhood and a bunch of hipsters followed. Rude. When we are young and inexperienced, we can react negatively to these situations. Stop copying me. I was here first. As we mature, we start to see them in a different light. We understand that stepping up and helping is a service that leaders provide to the world. It's our duty to do this, in big situations and small ones. If we expect to be leaders, we must see that thankless service comes with the job. We must do what leaders do because it's what leaders do, not for the credit, not for the thanks, not for the recognition. It's our duty. So this reading brought up some interesting thoughts and feelings for me. I grew up in a religious environment that taught me that as a girl, I couldn't really be a leader, unless of course it was to lead the other girls by example. And that example that I should set, of course, was being a good, obedient follower to the men who were put in charge of my life. Because of this environment, I grew up with a distaste for words like leader, respect, and duty. For most of my life, none of these words really resonated with me as something that was truly relevant to me and my life, but rather as words that were used by people in power to exert their control over me. Well, recently, I've been able to get some distance from this childhood perspective, and I've been able to begin making peace with these words. The first word I made peace with was respect, because I realized that the way people weaponized this word against me when I was a kid does not reflect the true meaning of the word respect. All human beings deserve a basic level of respect, but the amount of respect that was being demanded of me has to be earned. And really, it was only obedience that they were after. I now know that respect and obedience are mutually exclusive, and that people who demand obedience are generally fairly disconnected from the value of mutual respect. The next word I began making peace with, and to be fully transparent, I don't think I'm fully at peace with it yet, but this word is leader. As a child, I usually encountered the word leader as a vacant buzzword used to lay out the behaviors that were expected of myself and my peers. As I got older, I learned that anyone who would label themselves as a leader was someone to be avoided, either because their ego was too huge to reckon with, or their controlling personality made them very unpleasant to be around. Lately, I've begrudgingly accepted the term leader to describe someone who takes responsibility for the outcome of a situation. As humans, we should all take responsibility for our own actions, and if possible, our own situations. But we also need to collaborate, build teams, and work together on projects. It's not realistic to expect everyone on a team to be equally responsible for the outcome of the project the team is working on. So usually we have one or two people, maybe a handful, a small percentage of the team who choose to take on the burden of responsibility for the team's projects. I believe the more responsible you are for something, the harder your job is. And sometimes, even though not always, not as often as should be the case, this corresponds with getting paid more. Now, I'm still not really on board with the word duty. To me, this word implies an obligation being pressed on someone without their consent. I think the word duty is very similar to the word responsibility, but to me, duty refers to something much larger, something lifelong that tends to trap instead of empower. So I generally prefer to use the word purpose to refer to many of the same kinds of things that people refer to when they use the word duty. So far, I have been speaking about all of this very abstractly. So I'm going to offer you one specific example that deals with these ideas. Government and politics with an emphasis on political adversaries. To do this, I will once again be reading from Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. He writes, "Each of us can't do everything. Representative democracy gives us the chance to choose other people to speak on our behalf, ideally in face-to-face interactions with representatives of other stakeholders. By relegating the democratic process to behemoth media and internet companies, we dispense with both the power of rapport and the connection to place. This makes us more likely to see one another as less than human and act or vote inhumanely ourselves. In repeated experiments, social media platforms have demonstrated their ability to induce people to vote or not to vote by placing particular messages in their news feeds. Combine this with the same company's ability to predict how someone is likely to vote, and we get a powerful tool for undermining democracy by manipulating voters' behaviors. No fake news required. We have no way of knowing when this is being done to us or what other techniques are being used. Social media platforms have no facial expressions through which we can detect their duplicity. They see us, but we can't see them. In these virtual spaces, we can't even truly engage with the faces of other people. Our impulse for mutual aid and human connection remains dormant. Denied this contact, we start to feel alone and angry, making us easy targets for any demagogue who wants to stoke our rage and trigger our most sociopathic tendencies. The other side becomes an inferior species. Losers. There's nothing wrong with opposing someone, but our encounters with our adversaries must be grounded in the greater context of our shared humanity. This means that in every encounter, the human-to-human, I and you engagement itself becomes the main event. The other person's position, even a heinous one, still derives from some human sensibility, however distorted by time, greed, war, or oppression. To find that core humanity, resonate with it, and retrieve its essential truth, we have to be willing to listen to our adversaries as if they were human. They are human, at least for now. So this section, I believe, shows one example, or it discusses one example of one way that we can enact the value of mutual respect. Notice that respect and agreement are mutually exclusive. You don't have to agree with someone in order to respect their humanity. So Douglas Rushkoff continues, "Does everyone get to be on Team Human? How do we practice social inclusion with those who don't want to be included? If we can summon enough of our own humanity to really listen, we'll find that most of our counterparts are not truly violent or irredeemably mean-spirited. Understanding their fears and then working together toward our common goals is far more constructive than pretending that entire populations have no humanity at all. This means venturing as far back into their emotional logic as it takes to find something we can identify with, the valid feelings they hold, before they are transformed into their more destructive expressions. The enemies of a tolerant, inclusive culture don't see their position as inhumane or racist. They see the history of the world as a competition for dominance, and their own race and civilization as the rightful, if unrecognized, winner. What some of us understand as the aggressive colonial expansion of white European nations, they see as the growth and spread of civilization itself. Might makes right. So, in their view, those of us who are attempting to promote the cultures, values, and languages of defeated peoples are retrieving failed approaches, teaching them to our kids, and weakening our society. These cultures don't deserve to get taught, they feel, because they lost. The Silicon Valley billionaire with an apocalypse bunker in New Zealand uses a similar logic to justify creating the very conditions that are leading to a world where such a plan B would be required. The smartest, wealthiest technologist gets to survive because he won. It's hyperbolic, digitally amplified, zero-sum. It is a hyperbolic, digitally amplified, zero-sum version of the same exclusion. So how do we engage with such a perspective? First, by acknowledging the vulnerability for which it is attempting to compensate. Free market fanatics, racist bullies, and techno-elites all see nature as a cruel competition, a jungle. For all of nature's cooperative networks, there are just as many species hunting and eating others. Letting down one's guard means being vulnerable to attack. Once we really see where they are coming from, we can empathize with their fear, follow them into that dark, scary place, and then find a better way out with them. We give our potential antagonists a solution other than violence or retreat. Yes, nature is a potentially cruel place, but it's not aware of that cruelty. The cheetah isn't intending to be cruel when it attacks the gazelle, any more than the tornado intends to be cruel to the town it destroys. Only humans are conscious enough to see nature's actions as injustice. We respond by assisting those who have been impacted and taking measures to protect them in the future. This is, quite possibly, our unique ability and purpose as a species. We humans are nature's conscience, and we do what is in our power to make nature more, humane. The extent to which we can do this is a sign not of weakness, but of strength. The leader who must attack another person to demonstrate dominance is weaker than the one who is confident enough to let them live in peace. The government that must surveil and control its citizens is less secure in its authority than the one that sets them free. The technologists working on apocalypse bunkers are not as confident in their talents as the ones working to prevent whatever calamities they fear. The people who exclude others based on race or class are less secure in their own legitimacy and competence than those who welcome everyone. Similarly, the person who can't see a human being behind the mask of intolerance is weaker than the one who can. So I'm sure that you caught the relevance to leadership in that passage, but did you catch the allusion to duty in there? Douglas Rushkoff writes, "Only humans are conscious enough to see nature's actions as injustice. We respond by assisting those who have been impacted and taking measures to protect them in the future. This is quite possibly our unique ability and purpose as a species. We humans are nature's conscience, and we do what is in our power to make nature more humane." I absolutely adore that perspective on humanity's purpose, and this morning, I think I would gladly accept making nature more humane as my duty. So this is very obviously a very easy transition to our feel-good moment this morning. This whole idea about humanity's purpose being to make nature more humane reminded me of a couple of videos I'd seen of sharks bringing turtles to humans on boats. In each of these videos, it was assumed by the people who posted them that the sharks were helping the turtles because each turtle was in some kind of distress which only a human could remedy. One turtle had a rope wrapped tightly around its neck, and the other had a rope caught in its digestive system. Now, this really blew my mind because sharks are, of course, natural predators of turtles, so why would they bring the turtles to the boats? Why wouldn't the shark just put the turtle out of its misery by eating it? Now, I don't know, and I'm kind of expecting to have my bubble burst by some scientific explanation for this, but for now, I am going to say that it is because the sharks wanted to help the turtles and knew the humans would help. I've overlaid some footage of these videos over this video, but if you would like to see one full video of what I'm talking about, I have linked it in the description of this video down below. And let me know what you think of this. Do you think the sharks were really trying to help the turtles? Or do you think there's some other explanation for this behavior? Let me know in the comments, but for now we are going to transition to our feel-good reading for the day. I'm going to be reading from a chapter called Become Adult in This One Wild and Precious Life by Sarah Wilson. The chapter begins with a quote from Viola Davis, and it says, "If you're dedicated to change, let it cost you something." Sarah Wilson writes, "I'd have to say that everything I've been fleshing out here looks a hell of a lot like growing up. In developmental terms, the process of moving from adolescence to adulthood is one of taking on responsibility for your life and life on this planet, beyond your own selfish pleasure and fears and discomfort. It's a stepping into what nature is asking of us. As kids, we are largely motivated by selfishness, and we must be taught about consequences. By our teens, we understand consequences and have a pretty good feel for values and moral codes, but we live on conditional terms, doing stuff if and as it benefits us as individuals. And when it doesn't, we blame, avoid, hold back love, get outraged, and look for excuses, all of which we need to do while we're sorting out our life and our place in it. Our place in life in general." I kind of butchered that. Let me read that again. All of which we need to do while we're sorting out life and our place in it. Eventually, playing victim to our urges and impulses gets kind of cringy, and being so preoccupied with ourselves turns boring and really quite meaningless. Is this all there is, we ask? Is this why I'm here? To push the case for this lumpen conglomeration of cells over and above all the other things in life? Honestly, it's hard to remain so convinced. I think we tire of chasing the false gods of pleasure and new shiny things. Plus, time is short, and we are no longer in the run-up phase of our lives. This is the main event, so let's live it, step up to it, meet it, and stop all this numb, life-light stuff. At which point we become an adult. The problem, though, is that our culture fuels teen-like individualism and has trapped us in a suspended state of indulged adolescence. Our current system needs us to stay preoccupied with ourselves, atomized, competing consumers, behaving like a bunch of mean girls at a nightclub bathroom mirror applying the latest lip gloss. We get caught up in embarrassing peer pressure traps, so much so that we fail to see that getting colored terrazzo flooring because Melissa and Trevor from the kids' school have it is pretty juvenile. We forgive teens for this kind of blindness because it's part of finding their own identity. But what excuse shall we give ourselves? I mean, we can keep blaming and deflecting, claiming we're a product of the polarizing media propaganda machine and tech companies. We can keep explaining things away and justifying our overwhelm and need to cocoon, bleating, "Why should I have to do it?" and "It's not my problem," and "It's too hard." But to do so is very, very adolescent. I am entirely guilty of having seductively made such excuses for myself and all of us here. My aim was to have a productive, true conversation that was also compassionate about where we were at and how we got here. But I myself eventually arrived at a point where I had to stop the rationalizing and take responsibility. Being an adult means quitting the excuses and owning the situation even when it's not your fault. It's doing what needs to be done precisely because no one else is doing it. It's joining a rally when it's your day off. It's packing up leftovers at the restaurant, even though it will be a bugger to cart them home on the bus. It's going over and checking on the young woman crying alone on a park bench. It's getting rid of your car. It's putting your phone in your bag when a kid chooses to ask you their important question. The wonderful thing for all of us here, I think, is that nature is making it easy for us to step up. so too our souls. They're summoning us to bloody grow up and get morally mature. And here's the most glorious bit of all. Isn't this exactly what we've been aching for all along? To step up so we can connect with life, to enlarge, to arrive. Compared to chasing my own happiness, so fleeting, or pleasure, so flimsy, being able to say at the end of the day that it was an honor to do what's right is a beaming thing. So for our focus moment today, I want to remind you that becoming an adult, or becoming an adult, in the way that Sarah Wilson speaks about in her book, this will look different for everyone. For example, I personally have no plans to get rid of my car anytime soon, but I do intend to put my phone away when a kid asks me their important question. Another reminder is that becoming adult can happen at different stages or different ages for different people. Legally, an 18-year-old is an adult, but those of us separated by at least a decade from this age would consider 18-year-olds kids. People in their 20s would consider themselves adults, but people in their 50s might not agree. I'm in my 30s right now, and I originally read this book in my late 20s, at which time I wrote in the margins, "What if you are no longer a teen and still haven't found your identity?" I think I might still actually be in the process of finding my own identity, but I can now recognize much easier in myself my adolescent urges versus my adult responsibilities. And as Sarah Wilson implies, I think part of me, or maybe even a very big part of me, wants to take responsibility. Becoming an adult can be a scary thing, but it can also be so freeing. Instead of waiting for someone to save you, instead of hoping and praying that someone sometime will do something, you make a plan to improve your situation. And then you can sleep better at night because you know something is being done. And you can make decisions without having to ask for advice or permission. You can make plans and trust that they will come to fruition. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will speak with you again tomorrow.